Let's talk about this. Nia Malika, before these charges were announced, Republican Senator Marco Rubio was on the Senate floor. I want to be clear here. He condemned the January 6th attack. He said it was a terrible thing. The criminals should go, there should be consequence for the criminals, etc. But he also seemed to downplay the seriousness of what happened that day with this comment. Take a listen.
You're not going to convince at least most normal and sane people that our government last year was almost overthrown by a guy wearing a Viking hat and Speedos.
Do you think these charges that illustrate armed individuals, paramilitary training, a conspiracy to stop the counting of electoral votes, do you think this will stop individuals downplaying the seriousness of that day?
Listen, I think it will for some members of Congress. Members of Congress like Marco Rubio, he, of course, is up for re-election this year. He wants to sound as closely aligned with Donald Trump as he can. So I think that is sort of where he is coming from. But you have had other members of Congress essentially say this was just, sort of a spontaneous, non-threatening gathering, a tourist event, if you will. If it was a tourist event, why were people cowering in their offices? Why were members of Congress reaching out to Donald Trump saying, call off this riot? These are your people. Make an announcement and call it off. They were in fear for their lives because of what we all saw on television, the gallows that were hung there, folks with Confederate flags. So it was very much a violent and chaotic scene with a purpose, and that was to interfere with the certification of Joe Biden's election. And these details of the case that the FBI is laying out with these recent charges certainly speaks to how complex and serious a threat it was on January 6th.
Jennifer, do you believe the Justice Department is trying to send a signal by charging these 11 defendants with seditious conspiracy, which is, of course, a much graver charge than a lot of the individuals have been charged with so far?
Well, the Justice Department does more than send signals with this, Jake. It's speaking out loud. It is saying that what happened in the months leading up to January 6th, and remember, this indictment charges from November 2020 all the way through January of 2021. This was sedition. This was not just breaking into the Capitol. This was not just assaulting police officers. This was not even just obstructing a proceeding. This was sedition. This was actually interfering with the lawful transfer of power as set out in the Constitution. And if it's sedition for these guys, you better believe it's also sedition for people who took part in other plots, or this plot spread further out to actually stop that transition of power from happening. So the fact that they have labeled it as such through this indictment means to me, finally we know that the Justice Department is serious and they're going after other people for this as well.
And Phil, prosecutors say these Oath Keepers were training, recruiting, and gathering guns, ammo, gear before the attack on the Capitol. Are you surprised the FBI didn't stop them or catch them before this happened?
No, I'm not, because if you look at what we were talking about in the days before, you're talking about a political rally sponsored by the President of the United States. So let's say, Jake, you go to a hearing in the weeks before the January 6th event, a hearing that includes both Republicans and Democrats, Republicans who will be favoring President Trump. In the hearing, you say, we have informants or we have technical coverage, meaning you're reading people's phones, their texts or emails of political rallies in the United States. I wouldn't want to do that hearing, Jake. I'd do it today. I wouldn't have wanted to do it on January 5th. I think that would have been explosive before we realized exactly what was going on here.
Nia Malika, given the detailed plot in this indictment, given the seriousness of the charge, seditious conspiracy, might that give House Republicans pause about killing the January 6th committee if they do, in fact, take control after the midterms?
No, I think they will absolutely kill this investigation, this committee, because that's what Donald Trump would want them to do. I mean, that is who they are taking orders from. Kevin McCarthy, should he be Speaker, he will want to remain Speaker, and he will want to remain in good standing with Donald Trump. And the committee certainly knows that they have a timeline. They are working under enormous pressure. They've had enormous success so far. They've interviewed something like 350 people. Most of the people that they have subpoenaed have cooperated with those subpoenas. They are obviously trying to talk to sitting members of Congress who've so far said that they won't comply. But so far, they have made a tremendous amount of ground in terms of trying to lay out a full narrative of what was going on that day.
And Phil, so far the FBI has arrested 700 people related to the insurrection. They say they're trying to seeking to arrest around 200 more. Would you expect more charges related to seditious conspiracy?
I would, just as a numbers game. If you look at you talked about 700, maybe reaching 900 plus people, only 11 are in the case today. If you assume that there's going to be another 890 plus or more, 900 plus arrested, you've got to believe that nobody else was involved in a conspiracy like that. That beggars belief. I've got to believe there are more cases like that. It's a reason we haven't seen this is they've got 700 cases already to prosecute, and this one is so much more complicated to prove. We'll see more of this, Jake. I'm pretty sure of it.
Jennifer, does this signal you think that the Justice Department is going to be pursuing more extremist groups in relation to the insurrection?
I think so, for sure. I mean, the Oath Keepers was only one of the groups that was involved. We know the 3 Percenters, the Proud Boys, or all sorts of other groups. I think they're looking at all of them. I think they're looking at their links together. And I think they're looking at what they did with people in the White House, in Congress, and others who were involved potentially in this broader plot to stop the transfer of power. I think they're looking at all of it now, so we'll have to see where it goes.
All right. Thanks to all of you.